Today we've got a great revenge, $10,000. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, tenancy troubles. For context, my partner and I have been looking for a new house in a different part of the country. The search has been going on for almost a year now, and we finally found a lovely place we think will be perfect for us, and we'll be moving in next month. This isn't a super dramatic story, but the outcome definitely left me feeling sadistically vindicated. Around the time the house hunt started, my partner was having a particularly busy period at work while I had some time off, so I decided to handle most of the correspondence with landlords and letting agents. Here's where it's important to note that I have clearly ethnic-sounding first and last names. Within the first month of searching, we found a lovely little college in the area we wanted that was well within our price range, around 200 to 300 PCM below our max budget. So we saw the listing for this cottage literally the day it was up, and I called them immediately, left all my details with a letting agency, and asked them to send over a video walkthrough of the place, which they did. We saw the video, still loved the place despite a few fixer-upper aspects, and decided to put down an offer at asking price. And since I was the one handling correspondence, I was the one listed as the primary tenant on the offer. Didn't hear anything back for a couple of days, so I called back the letting agency to see what was going on, and was told the landlord has had bad experiences going with the first offer he gets in the past. So since it was only listed the other day, he would like to wait to see if he gets a better offer before making a decision. I felt like this was a bit strange, but we really liked the place, so figured it was worth to wait to hear back, and we can still keep making inquiries into other places in the meantime. About a week later, call back again, and I'm told the landlord still hasn't decided. We figured that meant there must have been quite a few offers coming in, so we decided to raise our offer, taking it above the asking price. Cut to a few weeks later, still not heard anything back, and the letting agency has also seemingly gone low contact, consistently sending me to voicemail. On the rare occasions I did get through, I was told the landlord still hadn't made a decision yet, which then turned into them saying that he's gone apparently MIA and hasn't been getting back to them. I called them back pretty much once or twice a week for the 3 months following this, consistently getting told by the agency that they would get back to me the next day, and they never did. Eventually, we got sick of it and told them that we needed a definite yes or no answer because it was getting ridiculous. And while we loved the place, it wasn't worth the long period of limbo. Finally got a response about 3 days later with them saying the landlord rejected the offer and was refusing to give a reason. At this point, I had already accepted that a no was the likely outcome, but found it very strange that the landlord was refusing to give even a semblance of why. As most others have tended to explain at least briefly why they said no. I asked if there were other or better offers that he was considering and was told that wasn't the case. Even the letting agents who had come to know me at this point were clearly confused. Upon a bit of digging, turns out that the landlord is seeming a very traditional old white man, if you catch my drift. It started to make a bit more sense since within the law in this country, landlords can pretty much reject any prospective tenants for anything except for blatant discrimination. For example, if the landlord doesn't want to let to people of color. So it was definitely weird that he refused to even make up a fake excuse to give the agents. Safe to say we were definitely annoyed, but this was months ago now, so we had more or less forgotten about the whole thing. The reason I'm posting this here now is because turns out I'm still on the mailing list for the letting agency for properties in my search area. And yesterday I received an email about the same cottage having a renewed listing with a drastically reduced asking price. Turns out nobody else seems to want to live there, so looks like we dodged a bullet. While I didn't have much to do with it, it just made me smile knowing that this racist old man had the chance to take a great offer, but now has had to reduce it so that it's far below his original asking price, and I sincerely hope he's kicking himself for it. It's incredibly disappointing that they can just get away with actual, just blatant racist behavior, but if you believe in karma, it seems like there's a little bit going on here. Cogspara clarified, a commonly encountered phrase while renting an apartment or room abroad is PCM. As in 600 euros PCM. In the United States, PCM per calendar month is standard practice, so few Americans are familiar with the term. It's usually assumed that rent is PCM. Understanding the difference between PCM rent and weekly rent is important to make informed rental decisions when you're looking for rentals abroad. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy awesome stories of revenge, it would be amazing if you left a like or left a review if you're listening to my podcast. That said, our next story is, my petty revenge was an absolute failure. I work at a preschool, working with the 3 to 5-year-olds. I also have a disability, which means sometimes I use a cane or different braces. At the start of the summer semester, I spent 2 weeks working with a teacher I had not worked with before, but who I knew was difficult. When I informed her I can't bend over to clean tables, she commented, "I've never worked with an injured person before." It went downhill from there. I'm not a petty person, but 2 weeks of ableist comments will make anyone angry, so while she was out of her room for a conference, I made my petty move. We have wooden blocks in every classroom, and every room except hers had labels on the shelves to show kids where to put the different shaped blocks. Instead of using labels, she just fussed at the kids for doing it wrong. I put labels on the shelves, knowing that she would be ticked that someone had tampered with her room. I did it on a Friday. On Monday, I came in and lied when she asked if I knew who had done it. On Tuesday, I learned that she had thought it was the best surprise ever, and that she had cornered my coworker and made him spill the beans. On Wednesday, I received a thank you gift for all the hard work I do. Today, I'm thinking that I'm not cut out for petty revenge, and next time need to just go for the aggressive approach and smack her with my cane. Even in situations where it's not petty revenge focused, you've gotta hate when you think you've pinned someone. You know just exactly either how to push their buttons or just exactly how they'll react to something, and then you get a curveball and they act completely opposite to what you imagined. Turns out they actually despise surprise parties. Turns out they weren't actually looking to get surprised with a 4th cat. You know, those common things. Pandora-tastic wrote, "If your idea of revenge is to think, I know what will really get them, I'll do them a very helpful favor. Mwahaha. Then preschool is probably the perfect job for someone as incurably kind as you." Our next story is Snow Day Revenge. When I was a kid, middle schoolish age, my cousin and I walked to see more cousins to play outside on a snow day. I grew up in a tiny town where everyone was related somehow, lots of 2nd and 3rd cousins and stuff. The snow was pretty deep for where I grew up. Anyway, my cousin's mother yelled at and berated me and my cousin for ruining her yard. She was mad we made footprints. She was truly ticked. The thing is, we had only walked in a small portion of her yard and you had to look to see. Fast forward 4 or 5 years and it happens again. A big snowstorm blanketed our small southern town. This time I'm high school age. My cousin and I waited until around midnight. It was cold as heck, but we walked to my aunt's house and ran laps in her yard. We tried to walk in as much snow as we could. To top it off, my cousin decapitated the snowman they had carefully built with snow from the driveway area. Immature? Yep. Petty? For sure. This is my new favorite group. Is this like the social media age mother getting upset here, or is this like kind of back before you posted everything on Facebook or Instagram? Because I'm trying to figure out how you could have ruined her yard by stepping on snow. I mean, I guess I get it if there's some beautiful sunrise in the distance in a perfectly flat snow yard. But even then, you're still the crotchety old, "Get off my lawn." Examination Soft 9839 wrote, "Had a similar thing happen. I grew up in Indiana, and when it snowed, we would shovel driveways. If you chose to pay us, cool. If not, oh well." We had a well-known elementary school teacher get irate because we shoveled his drive, ordered us to leave. So that night, we went back and removed all the snow from his entire yard onto his porch. It was exhausting, but worth it. Screw you, loser. Our next story is high school hockey player who was former owner of my phone number continues to give it out to high school girls. It's 2012 and I got a new phone and phone number, which goes okay for about a day. Apparently, my phone number used to belong to a high school hockey player in the area who was also quite the ladies' man. It was a spicy text or two at first, and then butt dials from the kid's mom. Not only had he gotten rid of the number that I had just gotten, but literally everyone was still trying to contact him at his old number. And then I realized the kid was giving out his old number to girls he went to school with at the time. Like, a lot of girls, ranging from 14 to 18. I was getting a random number of girls texting daily, some saying some fairly explicit stuff, and they wouldn't take no for an answer when I told them I'm not the guy repeatedly. So, hockey player is continuing to give out my number to girls he goes to school with. And apparently all of these girls know exactly who he is and are very hot for him and so happy to get his number, and he is very definitely playing what seems like dozens of girls over a very short period of time. Screw this guy. One day, I start getting texts and it's two completely new girls. Numbers I haven't seen yet, but definitely talking like he's got them both all worked up for who the heck knows what, so I tell them to come over. Tonight. Do I give them an address? No, just come over to my place, be there at 6 p.m. Where did they go? I have no idea. They both seem to know the address already though. I didn't hear from anyone after that. I just sincerely hope it timed out perfectly where both of them kind of almost arrived at the exact same time. Stacy, what are you doing at Hockey Guy's house? I don't know, Marie. Why don't you tell me? No One 2021 wrote, I heard a similar story about a phone number that belonged to a rent-a-car company, or was very similar to a company's number. That was before mobile phones. A family was called regularly at impossible hours thinking that it's a rent-a-car company. At first, they try to explain that the number called is wrong, but usually it was difficult to persuade the caller. After some time, they realized that it's much easier and a shorter conversation if they just confirm that the car is ready and that they should come to get it. Dynamic Richard Punch wrote, I worked at a newer Domino's Pizza back in my teens, and the hotline number would redirect a small number of customers outside our catchment to us, and we'd have to give them the direct line number for the Domino's in their catchment area. We had a regular customer who would refuse to save the direct number and demand we take their order and then call their Domino's and place the order we just took on their behalf. Although some of the in-store employees would do just that, me and the other delivery drivers didn't have time. So we started saying that we would take their order, that it would be ready in half an hour, and then just go back to whatever we were doing instead of calling up the other store to place the order again. Issue sorted itself out within the month. This next story is, are you sure you speak English? Background/context. I speak Korean well enough to hold a conversation, but speaking English can be a status symbol to some Korean people, so they like to show off their English-speaking skills. I'm English, my husband's Korean. We went to meet some of his old friends from university. He warned me about one friend in the group who had always been a jerk. We were in our 30s and jerk still hadn't grown out of being a jerk, apparently. Despite everyone in the group being able to speak Korean, Jerk decided to show off by speaking English. Everything Jerk said, I pretended I couldn't understand. Sorry, I couldn't catch that. Maybe your accent is a little thick. Maybe your pronunciation is off. Sorry, could you repeat that? My husband knew almost immediately that I was doing it on purpose and he found it hilarious. Jerk missed the next meetup. Nothing like going on a little humbling crusade for somebody who desperately is in dire need of it. Some people like that genuinely need to have that reset button pressed on them. I think a lot of people would genuinely benefit as a person from an experience like that. Depends how stubborn and narcissistic they are. Expert Slip 7543 wrote, you reminded me that years ago, an American friend of mine, a linguist who had lived in Japan for 12 years, told me this story from her time there. She and a group of male Japanese colleagues went to a restaurant. The waitress pretended not to understand my friend's Japanese while acting coy and giggling. It was for attention and to humiliate the American. My friend finally said loudly in perfect Japanese what translates as, do you need me to say it in Korean for you to understand? The waitress dropped the pretense and acted appropriately after that humiliation. People like her look far down upon Korean immigrants in her country, so the suggestion that she was Korean defeated her. OP responded saying, you could probably do that in Korea, but substitute Chinese as the humiliating language. I was waiting for someone else in the group to say that they could understand Jerk, because his English was fine, but no one did. I guess he was super unpopular and people enjoyed the embarrassment. I've thought about it since, and my response would have been along the lines of, I usually speak Korean to Koreans, so I'm not familiar with the accent. Which is a complete lie, but I can't think of anything better. Our next story is 1985 Revenge on Landlords. Things were a lot different when there weren't cameras everywhere, before caller ID, and when business transactions could easily be conducted by phone. In 1984, I stopped shooting dope and drinking bourbon for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Soon after, I transformed from a slouch to working literally 105 hours a week. I sobered up but still thought that my problem was money. I can't describe how unwell the mind is when you're newly clean. There's no intoxicants, but it's not like you're suddenly emotionally balanced. To save money, I rented a standalone garage remodel from what were called yuppies at the time. I viewed the place while they were literally in the unit transforming it, and it was exactly what I needed. Small, inexpensive, all the basics, none of the frills. We hit it off immediately and I was so gleeful at my lucky find as they walked me through and said, "And we'll be adding this, and that will go here, and this will go there." And it seemed super legit since they were covered in paint and actively transforming the place. I signed the one-page rental agreement, give them cash, and in a week I moved in. Only they didn't continue the remodel once they had a fish on the hook. This was in Florida in the summer, and they neither added an AC unit or screens on the windows. If you've never had palmetto bugs flying at your face because you keep your window open at night, that's a good thing for you. They're giant flying roaches from the 9th circle of heck. It's also fun when they crawl over you in your sleep. They also never installed a lock on the front door. There were many other things, but these two, no screens and no lock, made living in the place worse than just sleeping in the woods. It was an oven and the light attracted bugs. Did I mention that Florida is also filled with mosquitoes? So I would go to a coin phone and call them. "Oh, we're coming over Friday after work to get that taken care of." Again and again, they never showed and weeks went by until it became clear they had no intention of spending another cent. I was ignorant and had no understanding of tenant rights. I also had a girlfriend who wanted me to move in with her, and so I did. I also did this, and keep in mind this is 1985. I think it's a federal offense to tamper with the US mail, so I in no way called the post office to have their mail forwarded to an address in Australia. I called the power and water company, identifying as the husband of the couple, and had both services turned off for 2 months as I was going to be traveling abroad. I, the owner, have a deadbeat brother who in the past has moved into my place while I'm gone. So please make a note in my file that I have to come in person to have service restored. Left the windows in the unit open, the door wide open, and food and sugar spread throughout the place to attract critters. Raccoons, ants, roaches, etc. Florida is a swamp after all. That's it. All I could think of doing was inconveniencing them and forcing them to go out of their way to address the inconvenience. When I was on the wrong side of things, just 6 months prior, what they'd done would have resulted in some of my past associates and I rolling up and dispensing a violent punishment, so I was proud of myself for taking the higher road. Is this petty revenge? I have to agree with OP, the idea of trying to live in that environment, especially with no screen on the windows and no AC. Honestly, I think it would be almost intolerable, and that's in 1985. I know global warming hasn't exactly burned the earth to a crisp just yet, but record temperatures are coming almost every year. I took a quick look at statistics, and between 1985 and 2023, the average temperature in Florida has gone up by 3 degrees Fahrenheit. For metric folks, that's an increase of a little over 1.5 degrees Celsius. It might not sound like a lot, but on the hottest days, add another 3 degrees and you combine that with like 80-90% humidity, you need that AC unit. Amateur Biotic wrote, "You are too kind to call them palmetto bugs. They are freaking flying giant butt roaches and they will dive bomb you." Repeatedly. Florida without AC is no joke. It's amazing you got or remained sober within that heck. Not sure I could have. I grew up in the deep south, humidity, flying roaches, the whole shebang. I honestly think I would rather be dead than have to live there again. My life would absolutely be dependent upon AC. I would not be able to leave the house. Our next story is annoying neighbors. Been having issues with the neighbors running a business next to ours. We tried talking to the business owner about our customers parking in our lot. We were told it's not their problem, it's ours. Noted. We got revenge a month later when a car was parked in the lot. We blocked it in with our vehicles and left for a job site that was 90 minutes away. Got a phone call 3 hours later that the new employee accidentally parked in our lot and couldn't get out, so they wanted us to move our cars. We told them it would be 4 hours or more. Their employees stood around for an hour before getting a ride. We finished up early and made sure to stop at a barber shop so all the guys could get haircuts before we went back. We got back late in the afternoon and all left at the same time without mentioning a thing to anyone. Haven't had an issue with any employees or their customers since. I would love if they all made an agreement to come back extra early the next day so that they could just go and block the guy right back in, find an excuse to leave somewhere else for the day. I guess though, to be fair, it would be kind of mean to the new employee. Amateur Biotic wrote, "So good I had to read it twice. Too bad it was a new employee and not the owner." Our next story is, how long? Posted this and traumatized them back, but this sub was suggested as being a better fit. Back in the 1990s, I worked as a taxi dispatcher. Computer system had a facility to match phone number to the address as a template, if the number wasn't withheld. Call came in with no number showing. I asked the customer, "Whereabouts are you?" His reply, "In my lounge." Oh joy, a smart butt. But so am I. Got all the details, address, number of people, etc., put the job in, and then the customer asked, "How long will the taxi be?" "About 4.5 meters. Well, at least it won't be too much of a walk. Oder Joe 1 wrote, "You gave him the short answer." Our next story is Walkie Talky Revenge. I'm solo parenting 3 kids right now. My wife went on a once-in-a-lifetime trip with her mom in Europe. Of course, 2 days into the trip, strep throat hits my son. Our support system is zero where we live, so I had to haul healthy kids to the doctor's office and all over as I got my son treatment. Super stressful. So, finally get my 9-year-old son home and set up in bed with Nintendo and some juice. The pharmacy calls, saying his antibiotic is finally ready. I didn't want to get him back in the car after doing that all day, so I came up with a plan. We have never left my son home alone for any time, but I felt confident with going 1.5 miles up the road to the pharmacy, and I'd leave a walkie-talkie with him, take the other with me, and my twin 7-year-olds. So I'm panicking, driving down the street, checking in on him every minute or so, just making sure he's cool. They're cheap walkie-talkies, so they went out of range faster than I thought. I'm at the drive-thru at Walgreens, and I hit the talk button to say, "Son, can you hear me? I'm almost done." A nasty-sounding woman pops in and says, "Who is this?" I say, "I'm sorry, my son is at home and I was using a walkie-talkie to check on him." The nasty woman immediately comes in and says, "Well, get off our channel." That's when nasty woman number 2 chimes in and says, "Yeah, get the freak off our channel." I was pretty exhausted and started to laugh at these freaking walkie-talkie radio weirdos cursing me out like I messed up their life. I took a second and then thought, freak them. I have a white noise app on my phone that can also make some high-pitched tones for whatever reason, super annoying sounds. So I put the phone speaker right up to the walkie-talkie and hit that button, holding it down for at least 2 minutes. The sound didn't have to be super loud since the speaker was right on the walkie-talkie. I then shut it off and laughed as we got my son's medicine and got close enough to home for me to check on him again. We were gone for maybe 12 minutes. He was great, just playing Mario Bros. He's on the mend. I was able to get my solo parenting stress out on those 2 walkie-talkie weirdo witches. 10 out of 10. Would recommend messing with people via walkie-talkie. If anything, hearing this story, I'm just surprised that OP went driving somewhere and then ended up running into somebody talking on the walkie-talkie. I heard this story and honestly, for some reason, I just assumed that this also took place in like 1985, like the other story did, just because for whatever reason, my idea of talking on walkie-talkies is that like throwback 1980s kids movie, or even like Stranger Things or something. And then it got to the point where OP said, "On my phone, there's an app." Although maybe that's just a sign that I continue to get older and older. SLJ7 wrote, "Even if those things claim they have 40-mile range, you'll be lucky to get to the corner store before they cut out. It's frustrating for sure. Not that this isn't hilarious and fitting, but one thing you can do next time is use a tablet and stay on a continuous video call. Then it's private, and you can talk without pressing a button. The Amazon Echo Show devices have drop-in with video." OP responded saying, "That's an awesome idea. My wife and I have been letting him stay alone for short periods, like 20 minutes, just to make sure he's confident. Thanks for sharing that." Our next story is $500 stove replacement costs landlord over $10,000 in electrical work. In October 2014, I moved into a basement room shared with a lady from Oman. The landlord and his wife lived upstairs but shared nothing with us. I'm short, 5'6", and have short arms and a beer belly, so reaching the back burners safely isn't always easy for me. The large front burner was broken the day I moved in, and I asked the landlord to fix it. I then went and bought some groceries. While I was out, he went in and fixed it. Later, I learned that he simply used 14-gauge wire to move the power from the back right to the front right burner. Fast forward to 2016, the fixed burner starts to spark. In early February, I asked him to go buy a new stove as the one he has is not safe. I go online, find a half-dozen local scratch and dent and refurb companies that have new or refurb stoves for under $500. He refuses and again just fixes it with 14-gauge wire. At this point, I'm not feeling 100% safe in my own apartment, so I call the Toronto Fire Department safety inspectors and the Ontario Electrical Safety Authority. They come in and find about 40 violations each. A month later, after about 8 hours of work and a new $800 stove, the electrician leaves, and the ESA inspects again and approves it. That night, my landlord comes banging on my door and tells me I cost him $10,000 in repairs and fines and I'm being evicted in 60 days. I looked him in the eye and said, "Man, if you just freaking listened to me and bought that $300 stove at the Scratch and Dent place, you could have saved $9,700, right?" And shut the door in his face and cranked the TV so I didn't hear him knocking anymore. Edit. 6 weeks later, I moved out on my own volition because I got tired of him and his wife stomping around. Eventually, I moved into a nice studio apartment and have been here a while now. I wouldn't even say this is revenge. I would say that this was ostensibly the right thing to do, not just for OP's safety, but for the landlord's safety as well. As much as they're happy to stand there and yell at OP saying, "You cost me $10,000, OP has every right to look him in the eye and say, "Yeah, I saved you from dooming yourself with your electrician work." You ever listen to Dumb Ways to Die? It's mentioned in there. Stump Dog wrote, "Wouldn't evicting you be considered retaliation?" Our next story is Teenage Pettiness. When I was 17, my cousin had helped me get a job washing dishes at the country club she worked at. The place was beautiful, had a great reputation, but the head chef was a complete and total butt. He was a short, obnoxious, Midwest version of Gordon Ramsay, minus the charm. He looked like a smaller version of Ricky from Trailer Park Boys. This man lived to torment others and bask in the glow of compliments from customers. He was constantly hitting on my cousin and belittling me, trying to impress her. I checked my schedule and he has me set to work on the busiest day of the year. It is absolute chaos from lunch until closing, according to my cousin, and none of the other dishwashers were available. That busy day arrives. I'm dutifully working, just barely able to keep pace by myself. The chef is in a foul mood and kept screaming at me for anything that went wrong. Overheated pan, dishwasher's fault. Waitress not picking up orders, dishwasher's fault. Spilled food. You get the idea. I just kept working and, according to the waitstaff, was doing great. After 4 hours straight, I needed a break and was absolutely starving. I grabbed a sandwich from the employee food area and was heading out the back door. The chef starts screaming that I can't take a 5-minute break. He runs after me and then grabs my arm. Bad idea. I was overdue for a break and in no mood for his bullcrap. What he didn't know, while grabbing my arm, was the reason I could only work a few evenings some weeks. I was on the wrestling team and had been since elementary school. As soon as he pulled on my arm, I pushed it into his arm and then hooked his other arm and hip-tossed him to the ground. I slid across his body and put my knees on his shoulders while looking down at him. I held him down for about 5 seconds or so to prove my point. My cousin was in shock and pleaded with me to stop. I let him up and heard all the macho insults you would expect from a grown man that was just ragdolled by a teenager. I picked up another sandwich and went outside to eat. Upon finishing my 5-minute break, I walked back into the kitchen and I met with a string of insults from the chef and an absolute mountain of dishes. Apparently, he decided to teach me a lesson. He took everything that wasn't being used by the cooks and dumped it into the sink, making a pile of greasy pans and trays in addition to the regular dishes. I smiled, walked to my area, picked up my car keys, and then turned and said goodbye to my cousin. I told the chef to shut the freak up because I quit. The look on his face was pure horror. The last thing I saw of the chef was him trying to get the pans out of the sink as I put my jacket on and walked out. As I drove away, I saw there were so many cars waiting for a parking spot that they would be buried for hours. I went home and ate Lucky Charms. In times of absolute, pure, unadulterated stress, at least I know the Lucky Charms got me. In all seriousness though, I don't know what this chef expected. They were both verbally and physically abusive, grabbing OP like that, and then turning around and putting that mountain of dishes in the sink, expecting OP to just put up with it and not just quit on the spot. I feel like even most people who desperately need the paycheck are going to see that and go, "You know what? No, I quit. I am not going to lay down and be an absolute dog to this jerk." L437 Dog wrote, "I have a complete opposite story. I also was working as a dishwasher. The buffet restaurant I worked at was on the route from a major city with no MLB team to one that had such a team. We were about halfway through the journey between the two cities. The buses would call and let us know they were coming and an estimate of how many were coming. This particular day, someone at the bus company forgot to call us. Needless to say, when the 17 tour buses of baseball fans showed up, we were unprepared. I ended up way behind and it was time for my lunch break. The general manager of the restaurant came back after removing his tie and sent me to lunch. He washed dishes the entire time that I was eating. This was about 30 plus years ago, and I still remember him. He was the greatest boss I ever worked for. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely awesome revenge story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.